Shared Future volunteer Daniel BENNETT interviewed Catherine Creed, an Advocacy and Training Coordinator at Community Relations in Schools. She described the work of the Education and Peacebuilding organization, working increasingly with school leaders to increase their capacity of developing community relations in their educational environments. This episode is part of our series on Northern Peacebuilders, interviews with individuals whose work and efforts contribute to better community relations in Northern Ireland. It is also available as a published article at Shared Future News.
My name's Catherine Creed. I work at Community Relations in Schools. I'm our Advocacy and Training Coordinator. I have worked at CRIS since 2009 in various different capacities, but at the moment I'm involved particularly in the development of the organisation, our strategic direction, and also the programmes that we offer in the communities that we work with.
Okay, so what does CRIS do?
CRIS is an education and peacebuilding organisation that's been in operation since the early 1980s, and we were originally established actually in 1982, and since then we've worked alongside schools to help them to maximise their role in peacebuilding. We always work with schools, we don't do to schools. For the first kind of 30 years or so of our existence, we were co-funded by the Department of Education. That meant that we supported schemes like Education for Mutual Understanding and SCRP, which some people might have heard of. We particularly kind of did contact programs for children and young people. First of all, just bringing them together and helping people to build relationships through encounter. And then later on by doing theme-based and issue-based workshops, things like flags and symbols, conflict, culture, identity. Over the last 15 years or so, we've moved to a more sort of strategic approach. Now what we do is work at capacity building level with schools. So we do very little work directly with children and young people, and particularly since 2010 we've done very, very little of that work. What we do is we work with school leaders to identify steps that they'd like to take to sort of help them to move forward with community relations. So we do things like staff values, visioning, development. We work with schools to look at their readiness to engage with good relations and community relations. We do staff training. And then we also kind of work in a long-term embedded area in key parts of the province which really, really need good community relations work doing. So in North Belfast, we've worked in partnership with two nursery schools, Holy Cross and Edenderry, for nearly 20 years now. That means that we work with them through changing funding cycles, through changing kind of government policies. And actually that enables us to track change over a really long period of time, which is quite unusual. One key thing that we do is we work at an intergenerational level with schools. So we particularly look to work with parents and carers of children because there's evidence to suggest that the majority of our attitudes and beliefs come from the home. So we work with schools to see if they're ready to engage parents, and if they are, we seek to use parents as advocates within the community to make a positive change.
You mentioned something about how people are segregated from a young age.
Mm-hmm.
Does that then have implications in further education?
So here at CRIS, we work largely at nursery, primary and post-primary. We also do work with our teacher training colleges. Because as you may know, we have two main teacher training colleges in Northern Ireland, as well as a couple of other routes into becoming a teacher. Stranmillis and St Mary's, they have a programme between their two colleges called Diversity and Mutual Understanding, which CRIS has supported for many years now. And as part of that, we provide young, usually, or trainee teachers with the opportunity to meet with people from the partner college, and also to explore some of the issues relating to diversity, which they will undoubtedly face when they go into the classroom through sort of teaching practice and beyond. We look at all sorts of issues in community relations in the widest possible sense, so kind of all the Section 75 groups, and look at kind of the interface, if you like, between personal and professional attitudes to some of those themes. It's definitely our experience from working with many of the students from Stranmillis and St Mary's in the past that a lot of them have traditionally gone through either Catholic nursery, Catholic primary, Catholic post-primary, St Mary's Teacher Training College, or on the other side, state nursery, state primary, state post-primary, and into Stranmillis. Not all, but a lot of them have gone down that route. And I think it's unfair to ask young trainee teachers to be part of shaping a different future without giving them chance to really explore what that means, because for many of them, their own experience of education it's felt like it's been positive. Like there's actually little understanding of why that is a problem or an issue. So we start and kind of explore, why is it that we don't necessarily encounter people from the other community, and why is it that we aren't passionate and kind of angry about the fact that our education system is so divided? So one thing that we'll probably be doing next year is actually supporting that diversity and mutual understanding programme between our two teacher training colleges again.
How important do you believe education is to a shared future?
Here at CRIS, we're very committed to kind of the values of shared future. We're not necessarily looking for a tokenistic shared future. We're not looking for people being put together for the sake of ticking boxes. What we're looking for is a way to create a society which is values-driven, welcoming, inclusive, vibrant. That doesn't necessarily mean traditionally just bringing Catholics and Protestants together, although that's probably a part of it. It's about looking at the culture and ethos of the places that we work. It's well documented that more than 90% of children in Northern Ireland attend schools within their own communities, which means that Protestant children tend to go to state school and Catholic children tend to go to Catholic school. Some go to integrated, some go to special, some go to Irish medium, but generally. But for us, there's a wider story to it than that. It's about the fact that we're educating our children largely in a silo-based system. And it's important that we look at how do we make that education as holistic and well-rounded as possible. We don't organisationally have an agenda whereby we're particularly pushing for integrated education. It might be that some of the schools and communities we work with are aspiring for that, and that's brilliant, but there are lots of communities that we work with where integration is a long way off. For us, it's about working with the schools and the communities at the stage that they're at and seeing how we can change the paradigm a little bit. It's not right that children and young people today are continuing to go through their entire education experience without properly knowing someone from the other side of the community. That is ethically wrong. It's also financially unviable for us to continue in the way that we are. What we're seeking to do is to work with schools and communities to look at how we can make that a little bit different. And it's not just by bringing children and young people together, it's actually about looking at the whole school approach. How do we bring our school leaders together? How do we bring colleagues from different sectors together to talk about the joint challenges they face? How do we bring teachers with shared interests together to share resources and to learn from and support each other? And particularly, how do we engage parents to say, you're the biggest part of your child's education. What can you do to make sure that your children don't grow up in the segregated style of education that maybe you did?
So going forward, what will CRIS be doing in the coming school year to progress their work?
Well, next year's actually a really exciting year for us. We've lots of things in the pipeline. And I'll maybe talk about a couple of them separately for a minute or two, if that's okay. Firstly, we work, as I said before, at sort of key geographies in a long-term and embedded way. So in some of our communities, we're now looking at sort of our 20th year of working with them. In North Belfast, we've worked with 2 nursery schools on either side of the Crumlin Road interface for many years, and over that time we've engaged hundreds, if not thousands, of families and parents. We're looking at how can we strengthen that partnership and how can we share the learning from it. Holy Cross Nursery School, which is in Ardoyne, and Edenderry Nursery School, which is on the Shankill, have actually co-designed with us a programme called Buddy Up. Buddy Up's now been referenced in the Together Building United Community strategy. It's about bringing together 2 children from 2 partner nursery schools as buddies, but it's also about buddying up their teachers, it's about buddying up their school secretaries, it's about buddying up the classroom assistants, and it's ultimately about buddying up the parents. This is a model which is so simple and so cost effective that we've actually written it up and shared it with every nursery and primary school in Northern Ireland. What we hope to do next year is firstly profile where it's come from, because it's not a lot of good news that comes out of North Belfast. And secondly, make sure that as many schools as possible can take that forward. So we're looking to kind of train people up and take the learning from that. Another geographical area that we work in is Antrim and Randallstown. And we've worked with them now for some of those schools for well over a decade. And they've actually got a partnership which is called Moving Forward Together. It's a unique partnership within education. It's 19 schools from the nursery, primary, post-primary sectors, controlled, maintained and integrated schools, and it's actually sort of grassroots and community driven. It's the school leaders who have come together and said, actually, we need to work more closely to support one another, to advocate and lobby for our communities, but also to promote good relations at a whole school and in fact a whole community level. Next year is a really exciting year for us in terms of moving forward together, because they've been established as a constituted group for nearly 3 years now, but they're starting to get to a stage where there are about 6,000 children and young people who go to those schools, and the ripple effect of day-to-day activity between the schools is kind of becoming a part of not just what they do, but who they are. So we're looking to maximise that next year. On top of that, we also run family community relations residentials. These are targeted in areas which particularly we've got a long history of working with the schools in. And we take about 22 families from 2 partner schools away on residential to Corrymeela for 3 days and create a new community during that time. We work with parents to look at what their role is in creating a more shared future, and I think that'll probably be particularly interesting to yourselves. So how do we move from sort of apathy and feeling like nothing ever changes and everything stays how it is to actually becoming active? How do we become active citizens, and how do we make our children's experience different? Next year we're doing at least 3 of those, one for Belfast, one for Antrim and one for Newton Abbey. So that's another thing that we're involved with. And then finally we run an anti-hate project which is called the Unity Project. It runs at a post-primary level, and it supports young people to move from bystanding to upstanding. So when they see incidences of bullying or hate happening, how do they actually do something safely to intervene? It's an American project that originally began in Maine, and which we've run since 2011, and we kind of hope to run that out next year as well.